All right, we are back. We are back for another session of Lunch Money Talks. All right, what's in my bag? Let's get to it. There's a lot to cover today. Traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, which one is best for you? So that's what we'll be talking about today. If you don't know who I am, I'm Confessions of a Black Female Investor. I'm here to share my experience learning to be a new investor in the stock market, and I want to share it with y'all. So again, we're going to cover a lot today. I'm going to get started with the disclaimer, and then we'll get the ball rolling. So all of the content I share today is for educational and informational purposes only. It's based off my personal experience, and investing in the stock market always comes with risk. Please do your own research or consult with a licensed financial advisor, tax professional, or other qualified expert before making investment decisions. Lastly, this is a safe space. We're all here to learn. I encourage vulnerability. I encourage kindness. Ask questions, take notes. Again, we are all here to learn. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. You do have to be subscribed to the channel to be able to ask a question, but please ask a question. I want to be able to answer the questions for you. I'm a firm believer that if I don't know the answer, I'm not going to play with you. I will find you the answer though, and I will get you the answer. All right. So if you haven't used the chat, please chime in on the chat. Are you team traditional IRA or team Roth IRA? Let me know. My lighting just went off. I have no idea why. All right. Well, I don't know what happened, but the show must go on. So we will just keep it going. All right. So let's get into it today. I do have some slides for y'all. I hate to hit you with the slides, but I think once you start talking about traditional IRAs, especially, you want to make sure that you know the numbers that come with the account and making sure that you are getting the best when it comes to those tax advantages. Okay. So we're going to get this pulled up, share my screen. All right, so here we are, traditional Roth IRA versus the traditional IRA. Which one is best for you? I'm going to cover it all, and I'm going to give us a plan here so you know exactly what to expect. So first, we'll start off with the overview of what is an IRA. Then we'll go into a traditional versus a Roth. We'll talk about the tax liabilities and benefits, contribution limits and rules, and then which one is right for you. At the end, if we do have some time, I would like to invest. Again, I like to show people how easy it is to invest, to get into my actual brokerage account and invest the money. If we do that, I'll be using my taxable brokerage because my Roth IRA is already maxed out for the year. Yes. So it's maxed out for the year. Can't invest anymore in that. And I don't, rebalance. So I will show you in my taxable brokerage, but it's the same philosophy. All right. Let's get into it. Okay, so starting for what is an IRA? IRA is short for individual retirement account. So it's a tax advantage way that you save for retire, much like you do retirement, much like you do like with your 401k or 403b, TSP, whatever you have that you are using in your employee sponsored retirement plan. Okay. So the purpose is just to grow your retirement savings with those same tax benefits. Now, the biggest difference is this is you doing it on your own. Okay. This is you going to a brokerage. I'll give you some options a little later in my presentation. This is you going to a brokerage, and then this is you managing an account. So you're doing the contributions, and then you're picking your investment. So it is not hard. It is not difficult. I highly recommend that people have IRAs, and I'll tell you a little bit more about why they're so advantageous, especially when it comes to tax shelters. So there are two main types of IRAs that I'll talk about today. Those are traditional and Roth. And again, I'll break down a little bit more what each of those mean and which one might be best for you. So just some basic information when to open an IRA. So I want you opening an IRA yesterday, okay? You want to do it ASAP. You want to do the minute you have earned income. So that is money that is actually on the books that the IRS knows about. I want to say that again. on the books that the IRS knows about. It has to be earned income, whether it's from a business, a side hustle, your actual employer, a second job, whatever it is, it has to be money that is on the books and is considered earned income. Okay. Now, there's a couple other instances, especially for children, that earned income can look a little different. I won't talk about those here, but if you want to know more about those, drop a comment and drop a question. I'll be sure to answer those for you. Okay. So first, you're going to open it as soon as possible, as soon as you have earned income. The next is going to be after you've got your employer match. So if you work at a job that gives you a 5% match, I want to make sure that you are contributing at least 5% into your employee sponsored retirement plan, and you are getting that free money. And then you go over to an IRA. Okay. If you have no employer plan, that's the other time. Now, if you have no employer plan, right out the gate, I want you having an IRA because you have to be saving for retirement. And then the last one, which is a little known IRA option that a lot of people miss out on, is if you are switching jobs. So this is one of the great opportunities that when you're switching in job and you are leaving potentially a 401k or some type of retirement plan at your previous employer, or you have one at your previous employer, you have 4 different options. I hit those last week. So if you didn't watch my video on employee sponsored retirement plan, please go back and check that video out. It's linked below. But the employee sponsored retirement plan, if you are switching jobs and you are going to a new employer, you can sometimes roll it to your new job. But the other thing you can do, the great thing you can do, is you can roll it over to an IRA. So that gives you instant growth because you're bringing some capital, you're bringing some money already with you. You roll that over to an IRA, and then you're automatically investing and you're ahead of the game. Okay. So that's just an option to be able to open an IRA. So some IRA timelines I want to make sure people are aware of. Your contribution limit reset annually, okay? So every year you're going to get a new contribution limit that you're able to use, all right? Your deadline to contribute is through the tax day of the following year. So the deadline to contribute for 2025 is April 15th, 2026, okay? You can access the money without penalties at age 59 and a half. Now, the Roth IRA has one more caveat that I'll talk about a little bit later, but for the most part, 59 and a half. And then this is a big one for the people who utilize a traditional IRA, RMDs, required minimum distribution. So this is why a lot of people aren't in favor of the traditional IRA. And that's because required minimum distributions are required. So that means you have to withdraw the money, even if you don't need it, right? Even if you don't need it, you have to withdraw a certain amount of money. Now, the bad thing about that is obviously if you're trying to monitor your income, if you're later in retirement and you want to continue to minimize your taxes, if you have to go draw out $50,000 that you don't need, that's going to be counted as income. So then that could put you in a potentially higher tax bracket. I'll show you the tax brackets a little bit later, but that's one of the drawbacks of using that traditional IRA is you are going to have required minimum distributions. So it's currently if you are 73, but it's going to be by the time most people on this call, most people who are looking at this content are ready to retire, it'll be age 75 that you have to start taking that required minimum distribution. All right, so what are the contribution limits and some of the rules for our IRA? So the contribution limit is $7,000, okay? So as crazy as it seems, the IRS sets limits on how much we can save for retirement. And I think I say this every call because it's infuriating for lack of a better word. Like it's so ridiculous that they put limits on how much we can save for retirement. But with that being said, the contribution limit, if you are age 49 and below, it's $7,000 a year. And if you are 50 and above, it's $8,000. Now that changes year to year. In 2024 and 2025, it was the same, but they do try to monitor inflation and put those amounts in. So I think 2023 it was 6,500, and then 2024 we went up to the 7,000. So that's something to be aware of with your contribution limit. The other thing is you cannot contribute more than you earn. So this is a big one. So say for example that I don't have a full-time job and I do side hustles, and on the books, again, on the books, I make $5,000 with my side hustle. That's all I can contribute. Now, if my grandmother passes away and she gives me $2,000, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can still contribute because I have up until 7,000. You cannot contribute that $2,000 because that is not earned income. Okay. So keeping that in mind, you can only contribute what you earn, money that's on the books. Your Roth IRA, it has income limits, which I'll talk about a little bit more, but the traditional IRA does not have that. And then the traditional IRA has tax deductions that may phase out depending on your income and if you are covered by an employer response employer sponsored retirement plan at work. All right. So again, both of these IRAs are going to have their benefits. They're going to have their drawbacks. As much as I'm a big fan of the Roth IRA, people have to do what's best for them. The Roth IRA makes more sense to me just because I am in a higher income. But if you are, again, we'll talk about some numbers later. If you fall into some of these categories where the traditional may make more sense for you initially, by all means, do that. Okay. So let's get into the nitty gritty. A traditional IRA is funded with pre-tax dollars and taxes are paid when withdrawing in retirement. So this I'll go on a little bit of a tangent here, but this used to mess me up so bad because I'm like, how is it funded with pre-tax dollars? Because the money that I put in is taxed, right? So when you get your deposit into your account from, your payroll deposit, that money that went to your 401k was not taxed, but after it comes to or before it goes to your account, you've been taxed. So I'm like, how am I funding it with pre-tax dollars? No, this money's already been taxed. Well, I'll tell you what happens. You get a deduction for that, and that's how it becomes tax-free. Okay. So it's funded with pre-tax dollars, and then you pay taxes when you withdraw in retirement. All right. I talked a little bit about the RMDs. So traditional RMDs are required for your traditional IRA, and it'll be going to age 75 again for most of the people probably looking at this content. It's going to be good for people who expect lower tax bracket in retirement. And this is one that you have to start thinking about because you're like, well, I don't know. Another thing that used to trip me up. Well, I don't know what my life is going to look like. This is a part of retirement planning, right? These are the things you have to consider when you determine, which plan might be right for you. And then lastly, as I talked about, the contributions may be tax deductible. So I've got an asterisk by a couple of these because I'm going to go take a little deeper dive in them to make sure you fully understand what we're talking about here. So the first thing that I had the asterisk by is the income brackets. So right now, these are our current income brackets for 2025, right? These don't change annually, but I have a feeling they're going to change in the future. I can't imagine that these will continue to be the tax brackets probably when I'm ready to retire in the next 10, 20 years, okay? But I think it's important people understand that we are in a progressive tax system, okay? So what that means is a lot of people think that, okay, well, if I make $75,000, I'm in the 22% bracket. That's not technically what that means. What that means is anything that you make over $48,476 is going to be taxed at 22%. Okay. So if you make $70,000 for the year, all right, that first $11,925 you make is taxed at 10%. All right. Then the next time, once you get to 11,926, all the way up to 48,475, then that money is going to be taxed at 12%, and so on and so on and so on as you move through the actual brackets here. So I just did it for single. Obviously, head of household, married filing jointly or married filing separately. You're going to have some potentially higher incomes and some things to consider there. But just making sure you know where you are in the tax brackets now and kind of what you want your income to look like, what you want your life to look like, what you want your taxes to look like over the next year. So finding out where you fit in here is the first thing you need to do. All right, so the second thing I talked about is how is it tax deductible? One of those asterisks. How is it tax deductible? And how do you determine if it's going to be advantageous for you? Okay. So right here, this is the kind of one of the biggest things that in helping you decide whether you want to go Roth or traditional. Okay. So if you're modified adjusted gross income, and that is going to be your adjusted gross income, so what you make for the year, but then your modified is all your deductions and expenses that you get to write off. All right, that's going to give you a new number, and that's what you're taxed on. Okay. So looking at this, I automatically see right here that if I'm single, head of household, and yes, I participate in an employee sponsored retirement plan. Okay. If you make 89,000 or more, you don't get a deduction. All right. So that automatically is a no for me, right? Because I make over $89,000, that doesn't make sense for me to contribute to a traditional IRA. Now, if you are single and you are, again, covered, so you have a 401k, you have a TSP at work, if you make $79,001 or $89.99, then you get a partial deduction here, okay? Now, if you make less than 79,000, you get the full deduction. And again, that deduction is up to the contribution limit. So if you contribute $5,000, then that's what you will get as a tax break for that year. Okay. If you are not covered by the employee sponsored retirement plan, your MAGI can be any amount. Okay. So you can get any amount and then you can take that full deduction. Now, the reason I talk about that is because, again, it's an instant qualifier or disqualifier for some people. So making sure you know exactly what your income is, looking at your taxes to see what your modified adjusted gross income is, and determining if the traditional IRA is going to be better for you or if the Roth IRA is going to be better for you. Now, obviously, there's a couple of different filing statuses that I didn't put here, so you want to make sure that your filing status is the chart that you're following. So I just put married filing jointly and single head of household. But of course, there are many other filing statuses to consider. Obviously, if you are married, then you'll see those amounts go up a little bit. But again, it's whatever's best for your income. So your retirement taxes, what are we talking about here? What are the things that you want to consider? I talked a little bit about like how you get in the mindset of figuring out, okay, well, how do I know what's going to be best for me? And if I am in that $79,000 or less category, which option is going to be best? So first is going to be, do you have any other tax advantage accounts, right? Do you have a Roth IRA that we'll talk about in a little bit? Do you have an HSA, a health savings account that provides triple tax advantages, right? Are you going to have access to that money for your healthcare expenses? Do you have a Roth 401k option or TSP option with your job? Those are things that you're going to make sure you want to be aware of. Where you're retiring at, right? If you are retiring in a state that does not pay income taxes, that's certainly something you want to consider, okay? Expenses. What are your expenses going to be when you retire, right? And looking at your income. So, for example, is your house going to be paid off? Are you going to be paying for kids in college still? Are you potentially going to be paying for a parent in a nursing home? There's so many things. So obviously some of that stuff you don't know, but that's something you want to consider when determining traditional versus Roth. And then what are your income sources going to be, right? Again, if you have a pretty substantial Roth account, or are you focusing on your Social Security? Are you getting a pension from your job? Pensions are kind of rare these days, but if you're working for the federal government, you're going to have a pension. So keeping that in mind and wondering, determining how much money you're going to be bringing in from other sources, that's something to consider, okay? All right. And then lastly, asset sales. So this is something like really important that you want to make sure you lock in on. And that is capital gains, right? If you are, say, for example, if you have investment property, if you have investment property and you say, you know what, I've retired, I'm ready to get out the game. I'm planning the minute I retire, I'm planning to liquidate and just sell all my investment property. Okay, that's going to trigger some pretty significant taxes, which is going to put you potentially in a higher tax bracket. So you want to make sure you're making a consideration for that when you are determining which way you want to go. All right, so now to the Roth. The Roth is my baby, as you can tell. But I'm going to break down the Roth. So the Roth is contributions are made with after tax dollars. So meaning there is no other tax break before you put that money into your account. Okay. You get your tax break when you withdraw the money out. So that's the great thing, that right now, that if I go put $1,000 in my Roth that it came from my paycheck, it's already been taxed. I don't get a tax write-off when I'm filing my taxes of the $7,000 contribution. But if that $1,000, when that $1,000 grows to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, I don't have to worry about which tax bracket I'm in, right? I get to take that money tax free from my Roth. So that's why the Roth IRA is one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of it. All right. The next thing is no RMDs, so no required minimum distributions. This is how a lot of people start the wealth journey and start generational wealth, because without RMDs, I can pass my Roth IRA balance down to my children. Okay. So if you want to say, you know what, you're living off your Roth, you're living off your traditional because you have to get RMDs at a certain point. If you want to say, you know what, I want to make sure that my child has $50,000 in assets when I'm gone, you can do that through the Roth IRA. You can't do that with the RMD because you have to take those, or you can't do that with the traditional because you have to take those RMDs. And then good for people expecting higher tax bracket in retirement. Again, one of those things that you might not know of, but thinking about what I just said previously, if you know that, okay, you're going to liquidate properties every couple of years, then you may be in a higher tax bracket than you are right now. So that's something to consider. And then the drawback of the Roth IRA, which I don't even know if it's a drawback, because I think it's a motivator more than anything, is there are income restrictions. You can make too much to contribute to a Roth IRA because it's such an advantageous tool, right? Because the IRS sets these limits because they want to be able to tax your money, they limit how much you can make to be able to contribute to an IRA. I'll talk about those income restrictions in a minute. In a minute, I mean now. Your Roth IRA income limit. So here it is. Okay. So again, these are adjusted every year, you know, based on inflation and things like that. Your filing status is certainly going to impact how much you can contribute, but then you're also going to follow your MAGI. Your modified adjusted gross income is going to be factored into how much you can make, excuse me, before you are able to contribute. So if you make less than $150,000, you can make the full $7,000 contribution if you are 49, 8,000 if you are 50, right? So once you get up to that 150,000, though 165,000, you can make a partial contribution. So there's some math involved that you have to figure out what that can be. And then if you make $165,000 or more, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA if you're single, filing head of household. So that's why it's so important. And when I say it's a motivator, because you don't know what God's going to do for you. And I know you may think that you are in a position that you may never be making $165,000 or more. That may not be the case, right? So you want to contribute to a Roth as early as possible and max it out as much as possible, because there may come a time that you can't contribute because you make too much money. All right. The other thing is that's your total income. So that's your total income. So when you factor in, I have a business, I have business income, I have my payroll income, and I have a side hustle income, right? So when you factor in those three income sources, it's really easy to get to that $150,000 if you're a higher earner. So you want to make sure that you keep that in mind when you're trying to decide, okay, what do I want to do? If I want to do a Roth or a traditional, am I going to get there too soon? Or if you are a high earner, right? If you're in one of those positions, if you're coming out with a tech job and you're making $120,000 in your 20s, you'll be over 150 before you know it. So that's why you want to run it up before you are no longer eligible to even be able to contribute. Now, there is something called a backdoor Roth for our higher income earners. And I don't have a video on that, but if you want one, drop it. I will do a video for those people that can't contribute directly to a Roth IRA. You can do a backdoor Roth. Perfectly legal. I know the term makes it sound like it's kind of shady, but it's perfectly legal. All right. So, regardless of the account, here's some access criteria I want you to be aware of. Okay. So, I already talked about it, the age, 59 and a half, time. You can access it immediately, but the Roth, the account must be open for 5 years. So, this is another misstep that a lot of people make. They think that, oh, I'm 59 and a half, I'm retiring, I got my 401k here. I'm ready to go live. I got my Roth. It's up to $250,000. Let me pull that out tax free and buy my dream car. But they've only had the account open for 3 years. That's going to trigger a penalty. So with that Roth IRA, that's another reason you want to get it started as early as possible so you can get that 5-year clock going. Okay. RMDs, I'm going to go back to exceptions in a minute. RMDs, the same thing. We talked about it. Roth, there is none, but for traditional age 73 now, but it will go to age 75. And then the fees and penalties is going to be a 10% early withdrawal penalty, and you're going to get hit every time you take that money. Okay. So every time you access that money, before you are supposed to, it's going to get a 10%. It's not a blanket 10%. Okay. It's every time you access that money. And then you're going to pay income taxes on it, right? Because it is income. So you are going to be taxed on that each year like you would get from a job. Now, the exceptions. The exceptions are something definitely to lock in on. I think some of these you may consider taking, a small piece of your IRA. Some not so much, but I think there's some times where you may need to. And one of the biggest ones is your first time home buyer. So this again, when you talk about wealth building, these are the strategies. This is what I talk about in my ebook. Okay. Strategy, strategy, strategy. It's all about strategy. People get hung up on the money, people get hung up on the knowledge. It's about strategy, right? Taking what you have and making it work for you. So, first time home buyers, you can take out $10,000, okay, out of your IRAs without it being counted as income to use for as a first time home buyer, right? So if you've got your IRAs growing and you're in your 30s and your 40s and you're like, you know what? Let me diversify. Let me go grab a duplex. I'm going to grab a duplex and that's going to be my first time home buyer. I'll take 10,000 out. So you've already got some equity in your duplex, and then you start generating income by living in one side for a year and then renting out the other side. Then that next year you move out and now you're renting out both sides. So now you've got the income from that, and it didn't hurt. You didn't deploy any additional capital because your IRA funded it. So that's something to consider. Secondary educational expenses. This is another option that if you're going back to school, you can withdraw from your IRAs. I wouldn't recommend it, but things happen. Natural disasters. So Hurricane Katrina, that would have been a time. An IRS debt that you need to pay, that would have been, you can access your Roth. I thought this was interesting. If you are a survivor of domestic violence, I think this is a little known thing that certainly needs to be known, that if you are needing to restart your life, your IRA can be accessed without penalty. I think that's amazing. I think that is just underutilized, undershared information. And I think it's a great benefit for those that go through that to be able to have that without get access that without getting hit by penalties and taxes to be able to restart their lives. So definitely a little known nugget that share, you never know what people are going through. Make sure you're sharing that information. So yeah, that's the access criteria. So which one is right for you? All right, so you're going to choose a traditional IRA if you expect lower taxes in retirement and you want the upfront tax deduction and you meet those income requirements. Okay. You want to choose the Roth if you expect higher taxes, you want tax-free withdrawals, and one of the big things is you want flexibility, right? You're thinking about your kids, you're thinking about maybe being able to help them out, get a good start in life, and you want to be able to leave something for them. Then the Roth may be the best option for you. So opening an IRA, what is it? What does it look like? Is it easy? Yes, it takes, I don't know, 10 minutes, 10 minutes to open the account. And something that I highly recommend. So you select a brokerage, Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard. Those are the big ones. That Robinhood is starting some retirement accounts. I don't like that. I recommend going to the people who have been doing it. No shade against Robinhood. I like Robinhood. I invest. I do some options trading in Robinhood, but I think when it comes to retirement, I would like to have a brokerage that is really well versed in that and that has been in the game for years. And Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard are going to give you that. Okay, you're going to link your bank account or your payroll account just to be able for them to pull the money, right? Then you're going to choose an account based on your goals, whether you go with the traditional IRA or the Roth IRA. Again, it's up to you. It's truly kind of going back through and reviewing everything that I've talked about. You're going to pick that account and then you're going to automate a deposit. So this, again, is one of those little things that make a big difference when it comes to investing. Automate. Okay. You can't miss what you never had. All right. So if you get your payroll check and it's $1,000 every week, okay, putting $50 automatically, or $20 or $10, putting that amount directly to your brokerage account will save you a lot of time and make you a lot of money. Okay. So whatever your payroll schedule is, automate that deposit to go to the brokerage account. And then here's another great thing you can do. You can automate your investments, right? So say, for example, you get paid every Friday and you automate $20 to go to that account. So 4 Fridays in a month, 20, 40, 60, 80, right? You've got $80. What you can then do is set up an automation schedule for your investment and say the last business day of the month, I want to buy $80 of VOO. VOO is an ETF that tracks the S&P 500, okay? So say you want to do that, you can schedule that to happen without any other work from you. Okay. So the deposit is automated and then your investment is automated. So those are little known things that if you are staying consistent, they will make a big difference in your portfolio and in your investing journey. Because again, it's really passive at that point. You're not doing anything extra. You set it up one time and it's done. So when it comes to investing, remember the A in IRA. Don't forget the A in IRA. And that is the IRA is just an account. It is just a place for you to hold your money. Okay. It doesn't start making money until you buy stocks, ETFs, bonds, mutual funds, or REITs. Okay. That's the real estate. All right. Until you buy those things. So until the money goes from your payroll to the brokerage account, then goes out to buy those stocks, you're not doing anything. Okay. You just have an IRA. You want to make sure that you are investing that. All right. Develop and stick to your strategy. So, whatever you decide your strategy would be, and if you don't know what your strategy will be, hit me up. We can do a strategy session so we can figure out kind of what your risk level is, what your goals are, and figure out, okay, this is the strategy that I want to go. What are you wanting to get out of your account to make it work best for you? Okay. Prioritize investing strategy. So I talked about this earlier. Make sure that you are getting all your tax advantage accounts first. If you do decide to go with a traditional or even a Roth, make sure that you are taking advantage of your employee sponsored retirement plan matching. If you have a HSA, whatever that's going to be, make sure you're getting the most out of that and you are prioritizing that before moving on to the IRA. And then lastly, I just said it, automate and dollar cost average. Dollar cost average is a very fancy term for just saying, I'm going to put the same amount of money in the market every week, regardless of what the market is doing. So, for example, if I put $50 in every single week, no matter what the market is doing, if a stock that I want is $10, then I'll get 5 shares. Okay. If that stock goes up in value and it's $25, now I can only get 2 shares. But I'm continuing to do that, which is then averaging how much I actually spend on that stock. So that's what dollar cost averaging is. Okay. Just being consistent, regardless of what the market is doing, you are buying stocks. And then you're automating, you're making sure that you set it up and it's done. You set up your contributions and then you set up your investments. You can do a mix of the two. I have a mix of the two. So some money I automatically invest. So my Roth, I keep it pretty stable. But my taxable brokerage, I do manually. I automate the contribution and then I manually deploy and pick stocks on how I want to invest just based on what's going on in the market. If I've heard about something, if there's a price point that I hit and I want to be able to buy that, then I'll do that. Okay. So, in summary, this is it. In conclusion, open ASAP. The best choice is going to depend on your income, your taxes, and your retirement goals. Don't let anyone determine that for you, right? Whatever you and your person decide, your goals are, making sure that you are locking that in and sticking to that regardless of what anyone else is doing. I cannot stress that enough. That's how a lot of people lose money, worrying about what other people are doing or sitting on the sidelines. So please make sure you are working the plan that works for you. And then your traditional IRA, again, tax break now. Okay, tax break now. You pay taxes later. Your Roth is going to be no break now, tax free later. Brokerages over banks. This is another one. So there are a lot of banks that are, I think Chase Bank is doing it. I know my high yield savings account, Ally, is doing it. There are a lot of banks starting to offer investing through their platform. I do not recommend it. I think banks are in the business of making money. Brokerages are in the businesses of making you money. So you want to make sure that you use a brokerage because they have their products tend to be a lot more diverse and their products tend to be a lot more affordable. So highly, highly, highly recommend brokerage over banks. Again, prioritize your accounts and factoring in your employee contributions and things like that. And then always consider long-term tax implications. Again, thinking about where you're going to live, thinking about what you're going to do when you retire, thinking about what your expenses. Look at it long term, okay? One of my favorite tax sayings is when in doubt, zoom out. And that is incredibly important to help you determine, okay, where do I need to be? What do I need to be doing? And how can I maximize it by looking at the big picture? All right. So I think that is it. That is it for the summary. That is it for the presentation. As always, I appreciate you being here. Like and share. If you have not subscribed, subscribe. Are there any questions that I can answer? Again, I can talk about this stuff all day. I think it's so important. I think it's the conversations that we need to be having in our circles, and we need to be having them informally and formally, like in this type of format. So if there are no questions, again, make sure that you subscribe to the channel so I can give you more content. If not, if you're not following me, again, Confessions of a Black Female Investor. I'm on Facebook, Confessions of a Black Female Investor, Instagram, Confessions _ Black Femme Investor. Obviously, you found me here on YouTube, Confessions of a Black Female Investor. But again, like, share, comment, make sure we get that engagement going, and hit me up if you have any questions. Thank you.